Good evening, everyone. Nipun sir will be joining us shortly, and then we'll be beginning with the session for today. In the meanwhile, I would like you guys to know that the topic for today's session will be on Pegasus spyware. So you guys can post your questions in the question section below, and those questions will be addressed by sir at the end of the session. Good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Am I
Priya.
audible?
Yes, you are. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Perfectly fine.
Right.
Okay, so good evening to all those who are attending this session. This session will be holding a discussion on Pegasus spyware, and we have Nipun sir with us, who is an alumnus of National Law University, Delhi, and he's been practicing at the Supreme Court and different high courts, tribunals, and quasi-judicial authorities. And recently, he authored an article on Pegasus spyware, which got published in the leaflet. And in that article, he had analyzed the law around the surveillance and Pegasus brushed with litigation before the court and the relevant protections that have been mentioned in the Telegraph Act and the IT Act. So today's session will be without getting into the nitty-gritties of the political aspect, we will be discussing it constitutionally. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing time for this session. I welcome you to this session, and firstly, we would like to know a brief background about this entire controversy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priya, for inviting me, and thank you, Desi Kanun, for having me here. I think one of the most important points that surrounding the present controversy is that it is not a country-specific controversy, so to say. There have been close to 55 countries, nationals belonging to 55 countries, whose uh, names and contact details featured on a list which was leaked and accessed by this consortium of different uh, press, platforms across the world, which was cumulatively called as Pegasus Project. Now, it was this project that could get access to the entire leak, and from that leak, it revealed that there were close to as many as 300 Indians whose name featured, including 40 journalists. And if newspaper reports are to be believed, then one person who also happens to hold a constitutional office. Uh, Now, this leak has exposed something which is very, very troublesome, because what has happened is that the governments are now making requests to an entity which gives you the license to use Pegasus. Now, what is this entity? This entity is called the NSO, which is a company which is based and incorporated under the laws of Israel. Now, this entity is further subjected to a supervisory committee which is appointed under the aegis of the Ministry of Defense of Israel. Now, when any country is supposed to, now, of course, what the company claims is that the Pegasus software, which uses a sophisticated technology to mount onto somebody's phone and copy the entire contents of the data of the phone, is something which is only allocated on what you call an individual access request basis. Now, what do you mean by an individual access request basis? It means that let's say the government suspects of a person to have committed an offense, or it suspects that this person may be, say, a part of a smuggling racket or a terrorist outfit, right? Now the government will send to Pegasus the details on the basis of which the company will issue the license, which is Pegasus, to be used to infiltrate into the cell phone of that person who is a suspect, right? Now the difficulty is that most of these countries have used Pegasus to infiltrate or spy onto suspects. Now, when you say suspect, it would, the thing that comes to somebody's mind would be a potential threat to, let's say, the nation, a criminal, a deviant, right? Now, the list does not feature any potential criminals or deviants. The list, in fact, features more than 40 journalists whose names have featured, uh, business tycoons and business magnates whose names have also featured, political party leaders whose names have also made it to to that list, and that is what has resulted into such a uh, response from the international community, because what they believe is that you are using this software to quell free speech. You are using this software in order to hack into somebody's account, right? You are using this software to sort of ensure that there is a chilling effect, right? Now, all these attributes are things which have conceivably led to the crisis that Pegasus is, right?
Okay, so as you have also mentioned in your article about the Telegraph Act and the Information Technology Act. So how is this related to snooping and whatever controversies have been going on?
Now, the Supreme Court had examined this issue before. The question before the Supreme Court was whether surveillance itself is legal or illegal. The Supreme Court said that in very rare circumstances, interception or surveillance becomes necessary. However, for surveillance to happen, there are certain effective rules and procedures which have been laid down. Now, one of those procedures has been mentioned under the Telegraph Act. Now, Section 7 of the Telegraph Act empowers the central government to make certain rules to protect the privacy of individuals, right? Or to also ensure that surveillance does not confer any sort of uncanalized, unfettered discretion at the hands of the executive. Section 5 subclause 2 also says that interception is permissible provided interception is done in on a case-to-case basis, and an order must come from nobody less than the Secretary of Ministry of Home Affairs. Hi, Priya, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Please continue.
Right. So one of the other aspects which has been examined is that this surveillance mechanism must not necessarily impinge on somebody's right to freedom of speech and expression, right? And to that extent, surveillance has to be kept within bounds. And there were certain procedural safeguards which were laid down. Now, what are these procedural safeguards which were laid down? First was that the request for surveillance has to be ordered by the Secretary of Home Department. And if in case it's, of course, the state machinery, then Secretary of Home Department of the state ministry concerned. Second, that request must be periodically reviewed within a period of 7 days, right? And that review has to happen by a further committee which is to be appointed under the aegis of the principal secretary. The period of surveillance must not under any circumstances exceed 180 days, so that there is no constant interception which is being carried out, right? The argument is that if somebody has to commit a crime or somebody is about to commit a crime, then the planning or attempt, etc., will only take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months tops. Now, if you have a further credible, actionable information to extend the period of surveillance, then you can do so only up to an outer limit of 180 days. If you decide to do it more than that, then that is an obvious encroachment into the right of freedom of speech and expression of a person, right? And also the digital privacy of a person, which has now been recognized under Justice Puttaswamy's case. Now, there were also other safeguards. They said that, let's say, sometimes in order to intercept, they may get in touch with telecom service providers, right? Now, those telecom service providers will also render all the assistance possible and will maintain utmost secrecy of interception of the messages that have been transmitted, and they will also destroy those messages which were intercepted copy. What is also mandatory under the rules is that the order under which surveillance will be given or will be ordered must also specify the authority to which intercepted messages will be sent, so that it is not being made available to everybody. So that if it really deals with issues of critical national security, or if, let's say, there's a conspiracy where somebody has planted a bomb or whatever it is, right, then everybody would be very, very, making that information accessible to everybody will make it even more dangerous or lethal, right? It may result into chaos. Therefore, they decided that there must be one designated nodal officer which will send this information to one designated officer who is the officer in charge of interception. And it is that officer which will also submit its report to say whether the purpose of interception has been satisfactorily met or not, right? Now, these were these various protections which were guaranteed. But what happened was, in 1991, the CBI exposed a very massive case of surveillance, of wiretapping, or phone tapping being done to politicians. And it was then that PUCL decided to file a case before the Supreme Court of India in 1997. The Supreme Court of India decided PUCL's allegations were that in many cases, information or surveillance was being carried out beyond the 180-day mandatory period. And sometimes there was no order to that effect. Sometimes it was only being done on oral assurances. Many times, agencies were not disposing of intercepted messages properly. Many times, a person was kept under surveillance for 4 years straight, right? The Supreme Court of India said that this is an obvious violation of right to privacy of an individual, and therefore, we have to take all steps to ensure that the right to privacy of an individual is protected under every circumstance, right? And therefore, it would be opposite if it is a person not below the rank of the Secretary Home Affairs who will be overall in charge, so that irrespective of which agency carries out surveillance, there will be an overarching control by the Secretary of Home Affairs, right? Now, there is also another school of thought which comes in, because what the traditional law, which is under the Indian Telegraph Act, was of 1885. Now, of course, these rules come into picture, but people were unable to find whether what is being subject matter of interception is only message or something else. And in order to quell this, the Information Technology Act, in its data protection laws of 2009, have given additional powers. Now, these additional powers are given to an authority. The same rules apply, but there are certain additional features which come in, which is, number one, now you have a power to intercept, which was already there, but you can intercept not just messages, but data or information of any kind. Now, when you can intercept data or information, it means a whole array of things. It could mean calls, it could mean pictures, images, videos, voice recordings, everything under the sun can now be intercepted, right? So question is whether the government has power to carry out interception. Of course it does. But can the government rely on a private foreign company to carry out the said surveillance or interception? Now, the Supreme Court has already said that yes, the power to carry out surveillance is there. But what is not conferred is a co-surveillance mechanism, which is to say that a government now takes assistance of a foreign entity to carry out surveillance. And I think it's very interesting to see what NSO Group's contract actually says. NSO Group's contract says that a government will have to make a request to itself, and the NSO will decide whether a suspect is worthy of being put under surveillance or not. Now let's imagine how troublesome this entire notion is, right? The problem is that whether a person is a perceived threat to the security of the nation is the sole and exclusive prerogative of the central government or the government of any nation. Now, it is well within their sovereignty to control any sort of activity which will be, which will be against the security of the nation. So, who can decide? Of course, the state enforcement agencies will decide whether a person is a perceived threat to the security of the nation or not. Who will carry out surveillance will be the government. And private players such as companies are only service providers and nothing else. Therefore, it is they who must report to the government and not vice versa. Here is a case, one of its kind, where the contract conditions of use of Pegasus software clearly says that if any government suspects any person to have committed it, must file a request backed with evidence, which will be checked by an Israeli company sitting thousands of kilometers abroad. Now, aren't we trusting too much on a company which owes no allegiance, which is not incorporated under the laws of our country, and to which our government has to become a customer or a client and submit its own report backed with evidence? Let's say a suspect, and I'm saying that, let's say in a terrorist case, a suspect has made an elaborate planning of, say, critical nuclear codes which have been taken away. Now, do you think you should give away your nuclear codes? Or the request that this person has access to nuclear codes? I think it would be very, very dangerous, especially in cases where there are competing security agencies which are the client of this private entity. Because then information which is as valuable as this could be sold to the highest bidder. And while NSO may claim that it has the most robust security mechanism in place, the most secure data, ultimately their data was leaked. And NSO is not saying that it is not our data. Right. So I believe that there is a lot which has been happening. Now let's look at what is happening on a constitutional perspective. On one hand is your right to privacy, which of course, as per right from Khadak Singh to PUCL to as recent as Gobind versus State of MP, or the most recent and authoritative pronouncement in Justice Puttaswamy's case, it has been clearly held that right to privacy is fundamental right. It is, in fact, it owes its origin to Article 14, 19, and 21 of the Constitution of India. It flows through the entire scheme of the Constitution and that old axiom that every person is, every person's right to be left alone is very, very important because that's an island unto itself. Right? Now, if somebody decides to enter into your cell phone by using a software such as this, then this is a punishable offense because this is hacking under Section 66. of the Information Technology Act. You are also infiltrating into somebody else's account to store data, to plant data, to remove data, or to delete data, or to vary that data, right? That also is punishable in offense. Now, a private entity being used to carry out this act of surveillance may have been protected so long as the government has decided to protect it. If the government is the one who is in fact making a request to that private entity, then this kind of a supranational process is unknown to law. Because the law says that it is the entities which are service providers or intermediaries which will request the government and not vice versa. So should private entities dance to the tune of the rules and comply, or should the government dance to what is there, which is stipulated in the contract of a foreign entity? I think that's a typical question. Second, and a more dangerous proposition is this, that can the government, with the best of intentions, give away its data or request an international agency to carry out spying for itself? Because if it is doing that, then I think that would be a far graver breach of the security of the state. And this government or any state is the one who is responsible to carry out, to ensure that the security of its citizens is maintained. Because the state is a welfare state. The state is not just a commercial entity trying to enter into contracts with people. I am not saying for a second that the state cannot enter into a contract with a private player in international market. Of course it can. What I'm saying is, can the state, while entering into that contract, be in a position to give its own critical data, which is so sensitive and personal that it may have trappings of breaching the security of the nation, right? And if it is against national security, then is the government authorized or permitted to divulge that data? Third question that I ask myself is that these entities are not subjected to Telegraph Act or Information Technology Intermediary Rules or the rules of 2009. So these entities can just give a flyby to whatever is going on, right? They are not amenable to jurisdiction. How do you sue them? Because your own government has decided to enter into a contract. I mean, of course, if it is established that the government has in fact entered into such a contract, because the government is maintaining a stoic silence on this, right? One of the other topics that comes to my mind, which is very, very essential, is what you call least intrusive method doctrine, right? The Supreme Court of India has clearly said that this sort of surveillance mechanism, which breaches privacy, has to be used as a matter of last resort. It cannot be resorted to on a very daily basis. When every other method fails, it is then and only then that the government can resort to surveillance of its citizens. And that must be backed with credible data. Here's a case where you are resorting to surveillance without first saying that all other mechanisms have failed. I can imagine that you had to carry out surveillance on a terrorist who lives, say, 5,000 kilometers away. But this is not such case. Here, people are residing within India. In fact, they are journalists. Now, the Pegasus terms and conditions clearly say that the surveillance request has to be legitimately backed by evidence. Now, the state, I mean, if the names on the list, as has been disclosed by the Pegasus project, are in fact the people whose information was given to Pegasus or to NSO to carry out this surveillance, then the state will have to establish A, that these people are actually suspects, B, that they have some information of their involvement with terrorism, and C, that they had in fact submitted such a request to the Israeli company. And E, all of this, surprisingly, is not against national security. I think it's going to be a very uphill task in order to even remotely establish any of these things, right? Now, when I say least invasive method or least intrusive method, what I mean is that the availability of this information otherwise would not be possible. But that does not seem to be the case, because you have those people walking right in daylight. There are ways and means in which you can carry out, interception without actually without actually sort of getting into their cell phones and checking the contents of it, right? And let's also look at something which is very, very interesting. It is the doctrine of chilling effect. Now, chilling effect is when legitimate individuals who are voicing legitimate concerns against, say, a state, against a government, and in exercise of their right to dissent, in the exercise of their right of freedom of speech and expression, are criticizing the government and its policies, then the government can resort to such ways and means to effectively curb their right to freedom of speech and expression, and resultantly their right to dissent. And therefore, this act of snooping will cause a chilling effect. People will be afraid to open their phones. People will be afraid to have conversations. People will be afraid to store data, because they don't know that the big brother is watching them, or they are under constant surveillance, right? Therefore, there seems to be a complete flyby of the provisional safeguards, the procedural safeguards, which were embedded under the Information Technology Act as well as the Telegraph Act. Now, imagine a situation where somebody is kept under interception for 2 years straight. So the 180-day period, which is maximum 180 days, even that period of 180 days can only be allowed if it is countersigned by and approved by the review committee. And here you are, without making that request to any authority, any review committee, any individual. All that you have done is you have taken the data, because in your own subjective satisfaction, you feel that the person is related to, is accused of having committed an offense or may commit an offense. And therefore, the request has been made to the government, to an Israeli company. Now, let's also understand how difficult is it that an Israeli company has an oversight of the Israeli Ministry of Defense. So are you not sharing your critical information with A company, and B, another sovereign entity? I mean, this is not just a breach, it's a virtual surrender of one's sovereignty. Because being a sovereign includes that you are able to take decision, not that somebody else approves it on your behalf. And if what the contractual recital say is true, then we are in a very serious situation, because clearly this company is being supervised by another state agency. It's like saying that whatever goes in India, or whatever clearances of carrying out surveillance which are there in, say, India, are being approved by, let's say, China, and it becomes a very disastrous conclusion to arrive at. I'm just changing the name of the country. I'm just using Israel instead of China. That could also be very, very problematic. Now, in the international arena, there actually have been cases against Pegasus. The Northern California District Court had clearly held that all these activities which are being carried out by NSO Group are patently illegal. The allegation against them was that sometime between uh, the data between 2 years, the WhatsApp uh, WhatsApp phones of, I mean, the WhatsApp application of at least 1400 mobile devices was compromised when this malware, spyware of Pegasus was introduced through a voice call feature. You will get a phone, you may pick it, you may not pick it, you may just receive it, you may answer it, unanswer it. Irrespective of that, the spyware has already been loaded on your phone. And the allegation by WhatsApp and Facebook on behalf of 1400 such consumers was their cell phones were targeted by this spyware. And therefore, a suit was brought seeking to revoke the license of Pegasus and also claiming damages and for the breach of privacy that has happened. Now, the owners of Pegasus Software, which is NSO, that company, decided to field its response. They filed a motion to dismiss the suit. Now, the US District Court decided to dismiss the motion to dismiss the case. In a sense, the District Court said that this seems to be an overbearing prima facie case against NSO. Second, it is very difficult to appreciate NSO's contention that on one hand, it will not reveal the data, and on the other hand, it was doing it on behalf of other countries. And therefore, it was claiming what you call sovereign immunity. The district court said you can't claim sovereign immunity because it was an action which may have been committed by the states or committed on behalf of the states, but since it is being committed by you, then you will be charged for all the offenses and for whatever penalties are there in law, right? And so to that extent, the district court there relied heavily on Article 17 of the ICCPR and also on Article 8 of the European Commission of Human Rights Charter, right? And said that you cannot have an unreasonable interference into the communication, homes, and lives of a person, because the moment you infiltrate your spyware, the first thing it does is to copy the entire contents of the file, of the cell phone or the device that it has been mounted on. And this becomes even more problematic because it's an individual specific request model. It's not a case that you sent a spyware to indiscriminate 5,000 individuals in one go. It's not that case. It's a case where you are individually making a request in respect of every person who you think is a suspect. So A, you better have an actionable information as to how do you think this person is a suspect. B, and which is even more crucial for Pegasus or for any governments which are using Pegasus, is that if Pegasus is being used to sort of carry out interception on political leaders, on constitutional authorities, and on persons from press and media, then the implications would be disastrous, because they are not technically, they don't fit the description of a suspect within the meaning of criminal law in any country. Then the most obvious conclusion is that it is being used to spy on them as to perhaps what stories are they breaking, what decisions are they taking, who are they meeting, why are they talking with a person, right? And what are their next plans, right? This I think is very, very dangerous trend, because spyware such as this has the power to even topple governments, right? And it is therefore that, let's say, the French premier Emmanuel Macron had ordered an inquiry into Pegasus. Out here, back in India also, there was in 2019 a report submitted to the parliamentary committee. Even today, there's another report which has been submitted, a grievance which has been submitted before the parliamentary committee. One of the advocates has filed a PIL challenging this entire system which has been operating. And the Supreme Court I don't know whether the Supreme Court has yet issued notice on it or not. But one thing is for sure that the case has been filed now. Now, I think also the government of West Bengal has appointed a particular panel of judge, a retired Supreme Court judge, who would look into the affairs of Pegasus, right? And find out as to whether it was permissible or not. Now, of course, I understand that the central government will argue that communication and interception, surveillance, etc., are all central list, and therefore they are well within the powers to do it. It's not. Nobody has any quarrel with that proposition. In fact, nobody even has a quarrel with the proposition that in appropriate cases, surveillance must be carried out in order to preserve national security. But here the question is slightly different. Here the question is whether the government can carry or can engage itself in a co-surveillance mechanism where you are taking services of a private player in the market, and that private player is a foreign entity based under the laws of Israel, right? Now, they are not intermediaries or service providers in the traditional sense of the term. And therefore, whether the government sharing their data and seeking access of of that license itself would would be problematic or not, right? Now, well, now the West Bengal government has only made an announcement. I'm not too sure whether the panel has been in fact appointed or not. The announcement is there for sure, right? But let's see how it pans out. But back at home in Israel, there was Amnesty International, which has also filed another case against NSO Group, right? Asking their license to be revoked. The Tel Aviv court in Israel said, no, our company is following the best practices and therefore there's no need or necessity, right? Which may call upon any interference or which may call upon the revocation of license which has been granted to Pegasus. And I think that is very, very dangerous because what is happening is that within the state of Israel, NSO enjoys complete freedom to carry out its activities. And therefore, can you then say that a suit is maintainable in, say, Israel? I fear not. But a good thing which has been done in the US District Court case is they said that since it is in an entity, since WhatsApp and Facebook are entities which are incorporated under the laws of Northern California or the California state, therefore they have the right to file a case there. And it is precisely for that reason that the US District Court decided to exercise its jurisdiction, right? Now, in the Indian context, what will happen? One does not know. Because in the Indian context, the list is huge, the list is heavy, both in terms of the names of individuals who form part of that list, and also how exactly would that shape out. Because one of the arguments against government would be that you have to disclose on the basis of which actionable information have you deemed these people suspects. Second is whether you took appropriate and due procedural safeguards in respect of every individual whose name features on that list. Number three, you must also disclose what was that information on the basis of which that interception was ordered. Number four, for how many days was that interception ordered? Number five, was it subjected to any periodic review by you or not? And number six, even having met every such facet, why did you go ahead and make that request to a foreign company? Right? So it is all these aspects which will be called into question. Now, of course, the central government may argue that it is protected under the security of state, and therefore we cannot divulge or disclose the data on the basis of which we did what we did, right? Second, you have to first establish that we actually employed the services of Pegasus software, right? That's a fundamental assumption. Now, if that assumption could be proved, then nothing like it. If not, then one could see, then the obvious allegation which can be made against any government is that the government is trying to bypass its own laws to find a different procedure to spy. And I think that would be a very, very unhealthy trend because, see, right to privacy is recognized universally as part of the principle under customary international law, which is right to a private environment, and that private environment extends to the conception of digital privacy also. Informational privacy and digital privacy are two very vital aspects of privacy, and that has also been recognized under the Puttaswamy judgment. Now, you cannot take away these vital human rights without due process of law. If you are following a process which is unknown to due process, then that process itself becomes arbitrary, irrational, and is therefore violative of Article 14. If you are going by a procedure which is absolutely antithetical to any conception of a statutory scheme of following those principles, I think all of these acts and omissions on behalf of the state would be a huge obstacle that the state must answer and address. If the state is able to address that, look here, we have all the data necessary against these individuals. We know that these individuals are suspected of having committed an offense or may commit an offense in future, and therefore we decided to take this data. And thirdly, yes, that this particular Israeli company is in fact a service provider within the meaning of our information technology laws and the Telegraph Act. If you establish all these instances, then and only then perhaps the challenge would fail, right? But uh, I don't know whether that's going to happen anytime soon. But this most certainly is one of those instances which has really shaken the core of of any democratic setup.
Okay, I think we can take some questions now. I think I saw one on the
So
chat box. Can you please type that again? Whoever asked that question. Okay, there was a question. How is California challenging NSO, which is in a different country? Someone wanted to understand that.
like I said that the users who belong to WhatsApp and Facebook, it was these two companies which were registered within the laws of California, and therefore they filed the case against NSO. Even under the scheme of CPC, wherever cause of action wholly or in part arises, it is the situs of jurisdiction. It is where you can file the case.
There's a question, what cause of action does India have in this regard?
Well, if I mean by India, do you mean the state or do you mean the subjects, which is the citizens? Because the state can proceed to immediately discontinue such services and respond by saying that as to really whether they have employed the services of the software or not. If they have not employed the services of this software to carry out any activities, then there's nothing for the state to fear. If they even have employed the services of this software, then they can say that These names are not the names, they are other names, right? But what can citizens do? What citizens can do is is seek answers as to how, in fact, since there's a matter which is already pending before the court, one of the other ways was to file a writ before the court to preserve and uphold their right to privacy, of which informational privacy and digital privacy are vital components. And it's very interesting because see, in even in respect of Aadhaar, the Supreme Court of India had clearly said that that provision which empowered private companies to store Aadhaar data or collect Aadhaar data, that provision was struck off, read down by the Supreme Court. And in fact, the new Aadhaar amendment in 2019 has omitted and repealed this entire provision itself. Otherwise, earlier you had telecom services providers asking for Aadhaar data, you had banks asking for Aadhaar data, you had schools asking for Aadhaar data. You were well within your right to refuse to give that data, right? Because it contained your vital biometric information. Now, here is a country which is, which clearly says that we will protect your data at all costs and we will not let it go into private hands. Your data is only secured with the government. And on the other hand, you have the government itself, which would, which is sharing and divulging that data to a private entity. Of course, if these allegations are proved, then there's a very, very big problem, right? So the course of action, I hope, uh, is this clear.
I think we can wait a minute more for the questions and then we can.
Sure.
Sir, are you able to access the comment section? There is a question posted over there.
Yeah, but it's so you would say the authority of India is security guidelines and is capable of effective action in your opinion? Of course, why not? The government is sovereign. Any sovereign nation has every power to A, terminate that contract, B, rely on its own, technology or its own service providers to carry out surveillance or interception if they should decide. Or even if they are, say, because of the technological innovation or sophisticated technology which is being employed, uh, even though they can enter into such contracts, they must do so without, how do I say, without surrendering or without impeding their own sovereignty, right? They can say that if you want to enter into a contract, please give an unfettered declaration to be bound by the procedure contained under the IT Act and the Telegraph Act. If you want to give us your services, that's the only requirement that we have, right? But that is not happening. And I think we are being too trustworthy of this foreign company because you never know who the board of directors are. You don't know whose stake and whose money is in these companies. You don't know whether storing data or giving them data or sharing information, even if it is for the purpose of making a request, could lead to a new form of, you know, uh, information asymmetry. Right? I think all of those questions would have to be answered.
Okay, if anyone else has a question, they can post it in the comment section. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with this constitutional aspect of Pegasus. You guys can access this live session on Deti Kanun's Instagram account as well, and you can post any questions that you have. And sir can be reached out on his Instagram account. You can always reach out to him. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you so much for wonderfully coordinating this session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.